don't think I want to do this anymore.
Why?
Hey there, my name is Crystal and
I'm Steve.
He's joining me, apparently, for this video.
I am here.
And today, it is the first day of spring.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
I know it is, but it's cold.
It is, it's cold today. It's been very warm this past week. We live in Connecticut, if you're new here. And it's been very warm this past week, and it's supposed to get very cold this next coming week. I got a comment on one of my videos, an older video, asking us what our tips are for somebody starting a garden. Specifically, they said Connecticut, but really this would be tips for anybody wanting to start a garden. I'm coming at this from a perspective of being budget friendly. So we started our big garden in 2020. I had been doing container gardening like on and off for years, like even when we lived in our old house. I remember having container gardening, but it was always very basic stuff, not knowing really what I was doing, just starting seeds, or I would go, when we'd go to Home Depot or a local garden center, I'd pick up plants and do it that way. But our big garden here, we started in 2020. During COVID, everything was shut down. Steve was home a lot. It was a very different time, but we got a lot done here at home, including building the garden. And we started with the basic bed, and from there we just slowly expanded. The very first video that I posted on our channel was like a montage of photos from 2020, like building our garden. So I will link that down below. There's no talking or anything, it's just pictures. Now I'm just gonna quickly list off some tips that I have, or tips that I would share with friends and family, or anybody that asks me what they should do to start a garden. The very first thing I say is to keep it simple. In the beginning, it can be very overwhelming when you're trying to look up information about gardening, and everybody has an opinion on how to do things, and you don't know where to begin, and it becomes very complicated in your mind, and you just kind of decide it's a lot of work and I don't want to do it. It's really not a lot of work if you keep it simple and you do things that you like to do. In the beginning, my suggestion is if you know nothing about gardening and you don't know where to start, I would say either a very small garden bed or container gardening. And they have the fabric pots online that you can get. Anywhere sells large containers, or you can use 5-gallon buckets. The food grade buckets from Tractor Supply are fantastic. Filling it up with some potting mix, maybe a good granular fertilizer. Figure out if you're going to want to use mostly organic things or conventional methods of growing food. And I would not maybe jump into seed starting right away if you feel like that might be overwhelming, and to go ahead and just buy the plant starts of plants that you like to eat. If you like tomatoes, buy tomatoes. Cucumbers. If you don't like bell peppers, don't buy a bell pepper plant. That's not going to be very encouraging or motivating when you go to harvest one and you don't even like to eat them. It is very rewarding when you get to harvest something and then you eat it, and it's just the most enjoyable tomato or cucumber that you've ever had in your life because you grew it yourself. And I think maybe knowing what's motivating you to do it to begin with, whether it's food security, the independence of growing your own food, even on a very small scale, it's very rewarding and you'll learn from it. So get a feel for gardening, buy the plants, whether you're doing just a small basic container garden or in-ground bed where you can do square foot gardening. Make sure that you have a good fence around it. Know the pests in your area. So if you have deer, you're going to need a tall fence. If you have rabbits and squirrels, you might just need a very small rabbit fence to go around the garden, just to prevent things from eating your plants. If you finally get around to growing lettuce and you transplant it and the next day you come out and it's all eaten up by a rabbit, it's hard to push forward when you go through all that effort and then something comes in and eats all of it. So the good thing about container gardening is you can move the containers around your property. You can find what works, what gets the most sunlight during the day. We are fortunate with where we have our garden, it gets sunlight a lot throughout the day. How many hours do you think?
After it clears the tree line till...
Probably like 8 to 12 hours a day of sunlight.
During peak summer, yeah.
That's something I should know. I don't know why I don't. My second tip is to practice some seed starting, but do it on a very basic level of just starting like peas and beans, carrots, lettuce, those types of things, by direct sowing them once it gets warmer out. Peas and bush beans especially, you don't need trellising for them. They kind of climb all over themselves, and you can really pack them in. Like you can fit like 12 seeds in a square foot of peas, get a nice decent harvest of them. If you decide that you really like gardening and you want to expand it, then you can look into maybe seed starting indoors, or getting a very small like greenhouse shelving unit. We had one for a couple of years that I absolutely loved. It was a Shelter Logic shelving greenhouse, and it was like 4 foot by 2 foot, and it was fantastic, and I was able to start seeds in it. I would also, without any grow lights, start seeds in my windows. We have a couple windows in the house that get a lot of sunlight during the day, and I was able to start them in the windows just using red Solo cups. I got a lot of tomatoes the first year that we used our garden. 3 would be know your grow zone. The hardiness zone map is created by the USDA, and in 2023 they updated it to show the most current zones. So the hardiness, having everybody watching me is making it much harder. No, you're already here. You can't just disappear, Steve.
Yes,
you're adding so much to the video.
But you can snap your fingers and I'm gone.
The hardiness map tells you the types of plants that you can grow on an annual basis on your property. So how cold it gets and how hot it gets in a certain area. For example, we have hardy kiwi vines. They can go down to, I believe, zone 4 as how cold it can get, and up to zone 9. I could be wrong, but that gives you the range of how hot and how cold it can get. So us being in zone 6, we're able to grow these hardy kiwi vines here. Other things like apples, peaches, pears, and cherries are some of the other things we grow. We also have hardy almond trees. Knowing what types of plants you can put in at your property that you can grow on an annual basis, the hardiness map will give you an idea of how cold it gets on an average basis. Now, we used to be on the line of between like zone 6A and 6B, depending on what map you looked at. Like when I would type in my zip code, sometimes it would tell me 6A, sometimes it would tell me 6B, but really the difference was very small, so it doesn't matter too much. But in 2023, they updated, and we are a solid zone 6B, and they added zone 7 to the very most shoreline of Connecticut. So if you are unsure of what your grow zone is, you can go on to the USDA hardiness zone map. I will link it in the description of the video, and you type in your zip code, and it will tell you specifically what grow zone you're in. The other thing that you want to look at is how long of a grow season you have. And that's from the last frost date, which happens usually in the springtime, to the first frost date, which usually happens in the fall time. And that will tell you how long of a grow period that you have. Ours has gotten longer over recent years, which is nice as a gardener, but it for sure has changed a little bit how I garden. The Farmer's Almanac website is a really good tool to look up not only long-term forecasts for what is predicted for the year for certain areas, but it also tells you average frost dates, and that is extremely helpful to know for when you want to transplant things outside. Tomatoes, eggplants, and peppers, those are nightshades, and you do not want to transplant those outside if there is still a potential for frost, because they cannot handle frost. Things like kale, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, those are all in the brassica family, and those can be transplanted out a little bit earlier. They tend to be a little bit more frost tolerant. Peas also. Beans don't usually get direct sown until after the last frost has happened, because they are not frost tolerant either. I do like to experiment in the garden, and I have some beans already started, even though we are going to be hovering around frost temperatures for the next week or so. I'm just a rebel that way in the garden. Maybe just knowing the information about where you are growing things. The fourth thing would be pay attention to your weather. You know, looking up the weather every morning has become a habit in my life. With a garden, you really want to pay attention at the beginning of gardening season and at the end of gardening season if there's going to be a frost. Because if you have things out there that are a little bit frost sensitive, you sometimes can elongate your growing season by covering those things. If it's just going to be like a temporary time of a soft frost, you can cover them with a sheet, take it off, and then it sometimes will warm back up again and you can get maybe a little bit more out of your garden. Just paying attention to the weather that way as far as temperatures go. The other way is with rain. So if you know you're going to be in a drought or not having a lot of rain, then you're going to want to make sure that you pay attention to watering your container plants, especially, or your raised bed. Or if you're getting too much rain, container plants in particular might end up needing some fertilizer, only because too much rainwater can wash those nutrients out of the soil and cause things like blossom end rot on tomatoes. And you can prevent that by just using a good granular fertilizer or compost, or just freshening up the soil somehow, depending on whatever the issue is on the plant. I never found myself really big into flower gardening. I've always loved flowers. I have always enjoyed planting perennials around the property and watching them come up year after year. Once I had a garden, I really got into like sunflowers and zinnias and having some annuals that I start. And those two things in particular are very easy to grow, usually. Sunflowers are a big seed that are easy to plant, and zinnias are also very easy. They're similar and they come in many different shapes, sizes, colors. I like to get mine at the Dollar Tree every year, and they always come up really beautiful, and the bees love them, butterflies, hummingbirds. It's just so pretty, and it really attracts the pollinators to the garden. Big or small, pollinate your plants for you so you can get a nice harvest from them. What?
The random egg sitting right there. Let's touch the well.
Oh yeah. Who's laying eggs around the property?
I don't know.
I think they want to give us an Easter egg hunt for Easter.
That's not the fun kind of Easter egg hunt. Is it warm? Oh yeah, it's warm. That's a fresh egg there. Look at that. The last couple things I want to talk about, I don't even know what number I'm on, but enjoy the process. Don't overwhelm yourself with everybody's opinions on how you should be doing that, or there's so many gardening channels on here. Everybody has their way of doing it, their opinions on doing things. We always get the comments of, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, or don't plant that now, or oh, it's too early for beans. And do what you want to do. Gardening is a big experiment all the time. You never really know what the weather is going to do. I mean, last year we had the smoke from the fires.
Yeah.
And it was so bad outside, and I swear some of our plants suffered from it, like our apple trees and stuff. You never know what is going to happen. You never know what somebody's exact soil conditions are. So I know that another suggestion would be, if you are going to be doing in-ground gardening, to have your soil tested to see what it's lacking in, what nutrients it needs in order to have a nice balanced garden. I always suggest with some of my in-ground beds, I add wood chips to them, and the worms love it, and it's full of worm castings, and there's a lot of life in the soil, and we get mushroom growth and everything else because of it. It's a really nice balance. I still offer fertilizer. I don't find that I need to rotate any of my crops because I rotate my fertilizers, if that makes sense. So sometimes we'll use chicken poop compost or goat poop compost, or I should use the word manure would probably be the appropriate word.
I prefer the poop.
We use manure compost in our garden, and it's like the best. Having chickens and a garden is the absolute combo. Not only do you get
A random egg in the middle of the yard.
random eggs in the middle of the yard.
The white grommets were over here.
Yeah, it was probably them. Yeah, she's over there. I bet she did do it. Just keep things basic. It is okay to make mistakes. It's okay to grow a tomato plant and maybe it doesn't make it for whatever reason. There's always next year. You can always try again next year. Some mistakes I made my first years of gardening was forgetting to water if it was dry.
Well, we also had a drought.
Placing plants in direct sunlight all day, not hardening off seedlings before transplanting them out long enough, like bringing them out for like a day or two and then transplanting them, rather than allowing for like a week or two for the plants to get used to the climate before I just put them in the ground. Did I say fertilizing? Not fertilizing enough. So granular fertilizers, liquid fertilizers, they're all great. We try and stick to organic things here. Espoma brand makes every single variety of kind of fertilizer. They have fruit trees and berries, and I recently learned that the berry tone and the holly tone are the same exact blend. When you look at the measurements on the back. Everything that you're going to encounter in your garden is going to be kind of like a case-by-case thing. So you might notice, like in the middle of summer when it's really hot and dry, maybe your lettuce is starting to do this thing where it's like shooting up really tall and it looks like it's flowering. That's called bolting, and maybe it just got too hot for the lettuce at that point. So that's stuff you're gonna learn as you garden. I do find sometimes that the garden can be exhausting some days when there's a whole lot going on. We homeschool our kids, and we also can a lot of our food, and in the heavy production time is in the summer when we enjoy going camping a lot. So it can get very overwhelming here pretty quickly. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I would suggest making it easy to water your garden, because dragging a hose around is a pain, and like you've moved pots around just to guide the hose so it doesn't hit the base of your plants and kill them.
Company secrets, Steve.
You need to make it easy to water.
Yeah. If there's a long hose in the garden, they can get heavy, and sometimes when you're pulling it, they can rip down other plants. You don't want that. So we have hose, which I have another video showing. I'm pretty sure I haven't really updated our Humidor watering system too much. You know, that's the other thing with container gardening. It's much easier to water than a very large garden, but for the most part, it's been, with how we have it set up, it was fairly inexpensive to set up. We have a soaker hose system, so it's pretty easy, but I actually enjoy watering the garden and prefer to do it by hand if I'm able to. But with a garden this size, sometimes I don't have the time to. So having the soaker hose set up and then setting an Alexa timer because Crystal's forgotten that the hose system is on and the well stops working. Oh, and if you do end up getting the itch for gardening after your first year, be ready to never have enough room to garden. There's never enough room. We expand our garden every year, or we plant more and more trees.
That's a good point. So your footprint, plan on quadrupling it at least.
If you like gardening. I love it. I love gardening with the kids, having Steve, we all enjoy it, and coming out here, and you know, even Steve will come out in the summer nights to find hornworms with our black light, because it's a really rewarding thing. He doesn't even eat tomatoes. He doesn't like tomatoes, but he likes the pizza sauce that I make from those tomatoes, and the tomato sauce and all those things that we make from what we do grow, he loves. It's a group effort, but I think if you have the motivation and you want to start a garden, there's still time. There's always time. Even if you wait what you think is too late, it's not. If it's October and you're deciding to start your garden, you can still start garlic at that point, and then the garlic will grow. You know, it goes into its dormancy, and then you harvest it in the following July. But you can really start your garden at any point, and then even here in Connecticut, but it just depends on what you're going to be growing. If it's the middle of summer, you can go to the plant store and buy tomato plants already and get them into your garden, and you can still maybe get a late fall harvest of tomatoes, or you can get beans in. Beans sprout really fast in the middle of summer, so there's always still time. It's better to plant it, maybe get something, than not plant it and then you absolutely get nothing, right? Oh, I think that's gonna do it for this video. Do you have anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up? Because you really
didn't say anything.
You were just here for the eye candy.
I am. I like candy. You can always start early, and if your plants end up dying, you can always buy. It's not cost effective, but trial and error, you know what not to do next year. but buying the plant gives you the chance to continue the harvest.
Kind of, and with that, I don't know what number tip I would be on, but I use my phone's notes, that notes app. I use that and I keep track of when I start things. And I'm able to look back at my notes from previous years to be like, when did I start that? I really needed more time. And from those notes, I've learned that I need to start my hot peppers and sweet peppers in like early January from seed in order to get a harvest from them earlier. If I start them at the same time as my tomatoes, I won't get a harvest from peppers until like September. So I start them earlier based on my notes. I think the dogs are ready. That's gonna do it for this video. I hope we answered the question that was asked, or maybe it was too much, or maybe there's more questions now. Either way, please let us know in the comments below. This isn't usually our format for our videos, but sometimes we just need to be direct. That's what we're doing. That's gonna do it for this video. Happy spring, happy gardening. We will see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.